The COVID-19 pandemic has had a profound impact on education across the world, from the shift from face-to-face to e-learning models and the impact it had on students' mental health. We're so inspired by the stories of how students and educators around the world have responded to the pandemic, and we want to share those stories. I'm really excited to be speaking to Taylor Walsh. Hi, Taylor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. Thanks for having me.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I've been a teacher for about 4 years now. I started my teaching career in South Africa. So I taught English to high school students for 2 years. And then I immigrated in 2020 to the UK in January, just before the pandemic. I've started studying my master's in psychology as well.
How are things different between teaching, in 2018, 2019, and in 2020?
It wasn't online as much. However, now, oh my word, it is a digital world. I'm pretty sure I didn't even know Zoom existed. The only thing that we've really had communication with the students with online was via email. It really kind of encouraged, or forced, should I say, the education system to kind of grow legs and climb onto an online platform. One of the things that we're noticing now, especially with younger age groups coming in and starting high school, is the after effect that COVID has had on them. Kids are extremely good with verbal reasoning, but when you get them to write it down, they struggle. And we think it's due to the COVID pandemic.
In terms of, teaching tools and learning management systems, what were the specific systems that your school adopted?
There were emails sent to us from management about how Teams works, Microsoft Teams, and how to use Teams and encourage your students to use Teams. In order to get learning back on track, we had to teach ourselves before we could teach our students.
And how did the students react to that?
I think they actually handled it a lot better than we did. Yes, I think they did find it challenging, but a lot of them learned really, really quickly. It was quite interesting to see how they learned, but also it was interesting to see how many excuses they had for not doing the work, for not logging into the lesson.
In terms of the resources and access, do you think you were sufficiently prepared and especially yourself and your students?
I don't think we were prepared enough. A lot of students didn't have things like laptops at home, or they weren't able to use a laptop at home or a tablet or whatever it may be. There were lots of teachers that did not have a very strong internet connection. Yes, we had our laptops that the school provided for us, but there were still things that we needed.
How did you overcome or respond to those challenges?
The government did give funding to schools to allow students to have laptops and that sort of things on loan for the pandemic. And as a school, especially a state school, we could only do so much. And it came from, parental support actually, and teacher support.
The pandemic has affected mental health of everyone, but I specifically want to just touch on students. What specific impact did you observe amongst your students?
There really has been a rise in mental health issues, so much so that in the area I stay, there's almost a 2-year waiting list. And it's heartbreaking because some students really, really need that extra support. Yeah, I just think there should be more psychologists and more mental health professionals and counselors to help out.
How have you been able to cope with your own mental health?
It's been very difficult. I was all on my own in the UK, and I'm sure a lot of people felt the same. But then having to be an educator as well, educators are selfless. They have to constantly think about their students. I have learned, especially during this pandemic, to take my mental health, my feelings, and box them up and teach and be there for everyone else. And then when I get home, I have the box again, which is not the most healthy thing to do.
So you've spoken all about being a teacher, but you're also a student. So
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, and how has that experience been for you during the pandemic?
So I'm studying my master's in psychology through Northumbria University. As a student, I'm all for distant learning for tertiary education. everything is available online.
Do you think empathy played a role during the pandemic?
Definitely. It kind of brought people closer together. Nobody knew what was going to happen. The pandemic all made us realize that we're all human, we're going through the same thing. And I think sometimes both staff and students forget that. That empathy that we all had during the pandemic is something that I don't really want school communities to lose.